Ready, set, adventure! Welcome to Hikanuki World Tour. My husband and I recently sailed aboard the NCL Pearl for 9 nights on an Adriatic sea cruise. How did this mid-sized ship, which started sailing in 2006, measure up? From idyllic ports on a busy itinerary, to recently renovated cabins, to lounges and public spaces, and food in the complimentary dining establishments. What were our favorite and least favorite things? Come along and see what we thought.
Rusty, rusty, happy, happy, hey, rusty, rusty every time.
The Norwegian Pearl began service in the year 2006 and was refurbished in 2021. We cruised in September of 2024 on a 9-night Adriatic cruise. And while we enjoyed this cruise very much, there were a few things that stood out as disappointments and even more that stood out as positives. The first thing we disliked about the Pearl were the transportation methods used to get you to the ports, especially as it's related to communication, cost, and efficiency. Now obviously it's beyond the ship's control how close they can get you to the port, but it is within their control to communicate and make this as easy as possible for the passengers. On our cruise, 6 out of the 9 ports required either bus transportation or tender transportation to get to the port. In Ravenna, the bus cost was 30 euros per person round trip. And in Dubrovnik, it was 15 euros per person round trip. While the buses were convenient and handy, I did think the price was a little high. In terms of tender ports, the system for distributing tickets was very inefficient. And once our tender ticket number was called, there was a long wait. All in all, I think there are things that NCL Pearl could do better in terms of transporting its passengers to the ports of call. The next thing that could be a negative for people is that it's really not a ship designed for younger children. While there are 2 rather large pools, there are no water slides or water features that kids enjoy. You're not going to find a go-kart track or laser tag on the Pearl. There was a nice sports court, but it did have very limited hours. And there was a climbing wall. And maybe the kids would enjoy a couple games of bowling, but that's really about it. So in my opinion, there's plenty of other ships that offer much more for kids to do. The next thing, while not a deal breaker, took a little getting used to. Although parts of the ship were definitely refurbished and seemed new, we thought there were parts that seemed quirky and dated. The layout of some areas made it difficult to get around or even difficult to find where we were going. For example, this lounge area by Malting's Bar, it just didn't seem to have a very modern feel to it. The grand atrium also was just not that grand. At Lotus Garden, it looks like they changed up the carpet, but it just still had a bit of a dated look. Our next disappointment was the entertainment. While most was good, there was just some that was missing. There was nightly entertainment in the Stardust Theater. While those shows were entertaining, the ship lacked a Broadway show and high-value production shows. Also missing, in my opinion, was a piano bar and stand-up comedy, which are staples on many other cruise ships. The last item is a little more of a disappointment versus a con or a negative, and that was the main buffet or the garden cafe. It tended to have rather basic selections. I didn't find the food to be overly inspired, and the selection was rather small and sometimes repetitive. I will say the carved meat selections were always tasty, and they always had a large selection of desserts and fruits and scooped ice cream. The desserts were definitely a highlight. While the Garden Cafe was not our main choice for dinners, we did choose the Indigo main dining room and had some very delicious meals. Here's a couple of our favorites. We would definitely recommend the main dining rooms in the Pearl. And now for the good stuff, what we liked on the NCL Pearl. By far, our favorite part of the NCL Pearl was the top-notch crew. Everyone here worked tirelessly and always had a smile on their face and welcoming words to make you feel at home. We can't speak highly enough for the crew of the NCL Pearl. One of the advantages I thought of this smaller size ship is you really got to know the crew and they got to know you, and it made it that much more fun. And I'm sorry we can't show every single person, but these were just a few of our favorites.
Welcome to Norwegian Pearl. Thank you very much.
And after a happy crew, our next favorite thing was the itinerary. This was a port-heavy cruise with 9 stops and 9 nights. Here's a glimpse at our port stops. Be sure to watch our videos to see a more in-depth look at each of the ports. I'll link them in the description box below. Each port was fascinating and beautiful, and we learned a lot on our trip. And I don't think I could pick a favorite. We also really liked our up-to-date balcony cabin. The cabin was fresh and bright. The color scheme was relaxing and modern. The bed was comfortable, and there was plenty of space in the cabin. The bathroom was also clean and modern, and our room steward kept it impeccably clean. I especially liked the shower door. And while the balcony was a nice size, the chairs were looking a little worn. But that didn't stop us from sitting out here almost every night. The next thing we liked, and weren't really sure if we would, was the size of the ship. The passenger capacity was 2,394. We felt like there were a lot of friendly people on board. We saw a lot of the same people both on the ship and in the ports, and were able to make some new friends. And it also made it easier to get to know the crew. And finally, an item that I often complain about, but on this ship I thought the pool deck was very nice, the pools were big, the hot tubs weren't very crowded, and there always seemed to be lounge chairs available, even on hot, bright, sunny days. So overall, I thought the pros outweighed the cons on the NCL Pearl. It was a nice mid-sized ship, but it does lack some of the bells and whistles that the newer ships have. But if you're like us and we're going more for the itinerary, I thought the Pearl was a great ship and would recommend it. It provided a very relaxing, carefree, enjoyable experience with good food, good drinks, and great people. Thanks for joining us at Hikanuki World Tour. For a more in-depth look at the ports of call and the NCL Pearl, be sure to check out our video series. And please take a moment to subscribe to Hikanuki World Tour and hit that notification button. Thanks for joining us at Hikanuki World Tour for our review of our top 5 likes and dislikes on the NCL Pearl. Today's travel wisdom comes from Steve Covey. Live your life by a compass, not a clock. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram and hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted when new videos are dropped.